up? What up? How's it going? Now, I know this is a little bit of an impromptu stream, so we're just going to give people a minute to file in. So, what's going on is I'm going to London tomorrow. I'm not packed yet at all, not in any way. But that's okay because my flight's not till like 7:30 tomorrow, so I still have like time and I plan on putting stuff together later. But the reason I bring that up is that we are not going to be having happy hour as scheduled this week because I'm going to be going and doing like royal things in London and looking at the crown jewels and going to palaces and doing other things. And I'm sorry, I just don't have time for you guys on Friday. But people kept emailing me about this Carlos Maza video that he did on critical race theory. And they're like, have you seen this? And I'm like, no. And I've heard about this guy. You guys know I don't really like watch YouTube all that much. I have no idea like who the personalities are or like the politics of it or anything. But I've heard about this guy and I know he's blocked me on Twitter. And I have a funny feeling that we're really gonna kind of enjoy a reaction to him. So I thought we'd do an impromptu happy hour. I'm not drinking because I only drink on Fridays or when I'm flying. I do absolutely intend to be drinking on my flight to London. I'll tell you that. I'm definitely going to be drinking. I'm crossing my fingers for the first class lay down seat upgrade. I'm on the list for the upgrade. I know I'm going to get the upgrade on the way back. I'm positive I'm going to get the upgrade on the way back. I don't know if I'm going to get the upgrade on the way there. So everyone, please send happy vibes to me to American Airlines to give me the first class upgrade to the lay down seat so I can drink and be treated well because the only place you get treated well on a flight is in first class. That's it. I'm so snobbish about it at this point. I'm sorry. Like I flew so much last year that I got like really high status with American, and so I get upgraded like all the effing time. So I'm spoiled. I am. Anyway, that's besides the point. Point is, I'm not going to be drinking tonight. I have a juice and I have water and I have a coffee, but we're going to react to this Carlos Maza video. It's like an hour-long video that he did with his thoughts about critical race theory. And so I thought that would be kind of fun. And we're going to treat this like every other happy hour, even though it's on a Wednesday night instead of a Friday afternoon. We're going to treat it like every other happy hour. And I think this could be a great opportunity for some Unwoke Bingo. If you've never played Unwoke Bingo before, now's your chance. The link is in the description below. Go ahead, generate your unique bingo card. They're all different. You get a free space. We're going for lines or we're going for corners. If you get a bingo, just yell out bingo in the chat. You don't win a dang thing, but it keeps us kind of engaged. It keeps us paying attention. I sometimes make up bingo rules on the fly, so I might give out free spaces just for no apparent reason, really. So you can take advantage of that. If someone gets a bingo in the chat, then we're going for blackout bingo. Maybe it's a good day for blackout bingo. I have no idea. No one's gotten blackout bingo yet, but we're going to get there eventually. I have no doubt. So before we get into it, guys, of course, one of the very best ways that you can support the work I do is by joining my locals community. I would really like to get 100 new supporters into my locals community before the end of the year. Now, you can actually join locals for free. You don't have to pay, okay? I want to make that clear. You don't have to. If you just want to join for free to check it out, see what locals is all about, it's scrolling by in the ticker. I also have it here under my name, kb.locals.com. But I'd really like to get 100 new supporters in before the end of the year. Locals is what makes it possible for me to remain independent, to be able to do the work I'm do with trying to translate the woke to people, working with different parent groups, trying to help people understand, trying to help people fight back. Locals is really, like, guys, YouTube doesn't pay the bills. I'm gonna be honest. YouTube is suppressing my content so bad right now. I am fairly sure that YouTube's not sending out notifications for anything. I've heard from like 3 people today that YouTube is like hiding my videos from them. So they're not only are they not being notified when they're posting it, but even after I post it and they go and look for it, they're gone. They're not there. It's really weird. Anyway, moral of the story is I need my locals community and my local supporters to be able to do what I'm doing. So hang on. I'm just going to put a link in the chat. And I'll tell you about the exclusive perks you get for being a supporter, because I do try to reward my supporters, of course. .com/support. I should have done this before I went live, but this was impromptu, okay? It was an impromptu decision to go live, so I wasn't prepared. Okay. All right, I put the link in the chat to become a supporter of my locals community. Now, to become a supporter, you got to put some skin in the game. It does unlock all the features of the community, right? So if you do it for $5 a month, you get that. If you do it for $50 a year, you get that, which gives you 2 months for free. You can also make a one-time gift, and that helps me stay independent. So I don't have to go do a lot of stuff on the side, which of course takes my time away from doing this stuff with you guys. So that's the way it is. And I really appreciate the support. I love my locals community. They're awesome. When you join my locals as a supporter, you get access to 2 community Zoom calls every single week. We actually have one tomorrow at noon. So it's a great time to join. If you have got nothing going on at noon tomorrow, you can come hang out with my other local supporters and we have a great time. We talk about what's going on in the world. We support each other. We help each other. It's really great. We're doing book club. We're reading Woke Inc. right now. And there's other perks that you get as well that you'll find out when you join. But definitely, I would appreciate it, guys. Nick Gage, who is one of my local supporters, says American Airlines syndrome, synonymous with Alcoholics Anonymous. Dude, this isn't, people don't believe me when I say this. I really don't drink that much, except when I'm traveling. Except if I'm in an airport or on an airplane and I'm in first class and I get to drink for free, then I drink. But I really don't other than that. So yes, airlines in general, not just American, airlines in general, synonymous with alcoholism. All right, guys, let's dig into it. I do need to be a little bit quick about this stream tonight because I actually want to spend some time with my husband and I'm going to a thing with Joshua later. So we're going to dig right into this and we're going to see what's what. Again, I don't really know much about this guy other than he's kind of like a socialist or a communist and he blocked me on Twitter. And it was like a big deal when he started his YouTube channel. I don't understand why really, but okay. So we're going to see what he has to say about critical race theory. You ready to go? Let's get started. And of course, please let me know if the sound doesn't work for any reason.
Chadwick, shut up.
Parents around the country are speaking out against woke curriculums as more schools begin embracing critical race theory.
Critical race theory.
Critical race theory.
Or CRT for short.
What exactly is critical race theory? Well, if you work in the government or in corporate America, you probably already know.
Oh, that's clever, isn't it?
Marxist ideology that they are trying to now put in the classrooms and put into the workplace.
Critical race theory says every white person is a racist. Critical race theory says
True.
America is fundamentally racist and irredeemably
True.
racist. Critical race theory seeks to turn us against
Who
each
drinks
other.
Mountain
Black people and
Dew
white
after
people
they're
hate
18?
one another.
Hate each other. It's a tragedy in that way.
Whether or not that's the working definition at Yale Law, it doesn't matter. I don't care. We don't care.
They are indoctrinating our children, trying to teach our children to hate our country.
True.
This is child abuse. It's
True.
abuse of everyone, really.
You're not imagining this, and no one loves your children more than you. It is now up to you to fight for it.
Not only do parents want it out of their kids' curriculum, they want to oust the school board members who are pushing it on them.
True.
We've seen yelling, screaming, protesting, and even some arrests.
Oh, we all know who this guy is. Who's this guy? This is the guy. We can't say the thing that he's doing, but this is the guy that was defending his daughter from the thing that we can't talk about.
So
course,
far,
that's a
9 states have officially banned critical race theory. And Jillian, the summer is still young.
This is probably a lost cause. One thing that conservative media is really good at is taking advantage of data voids, which means
Do people take this guy seriously? I'm genuinely asking. He's got 100,000 views on this video, so I have to think that people take him seriously, but like, I'm just not sure. Again, I have no idea who this guy is, but like, I'm just not sure that I would take a guy that just, chugged half of a thing of Mountain Dew and spilled it all over his shirt. Like, seriously. I mean, granted, like I have my own like weirdness about me. Like I understand why people don't take me seriously sometimes. Sometimes I don't even take myself seriously. But I didn't just swig a soda filled with sugar and then spill it all over myself and then say, "Oh, I'm an expert that you should listen to." I don't know. It seems a little bizarre to me, but okay, let's keep going.
Finding a topic or subject that no one is really talking about, and then talking about it incessantly. Critical race theory has been taught in American law schools for almost half a century at
True.
this point.
Yes.
But look how much people cared about it before, and look at it now. This is a smart propaganda trick.
Yes, because people were playing with language, so no one understood what was going on. And with social media, we can see a lot more of what's going on, and we can communicate with each other in different ways. It's like, so does this guy not understand that the communication structure we have in this country now is fundamentally different than we had in the 70s? Things have changed. There's more independent media. We can look at the bullshit that's going on a lot easier. Everything is online. Everything is available. You don't think this might have to do with the fact that the communication paradigm has completely changed? Oh, no one was talking about it, and now everyone's talking about it, and they just made a big deal about nothing. If this is going to be an hour long of like, I just don't even know why we're talking about critical race theory. Oh my God, just shoot me now.
Because it makes it so that anyone looking for more information about this scary thing they saw on Fox News is just going to find more.
I didn't see critical race theory on Fox News when I first discovered it. I saw it in the workplace, and when I started seeing it, it was creating massive amounts of dysfunction in the workplaces that I was working in, and I couldn't figure out why, and then got the language to put to it.
More bullshit that confirms their fears. Search for critical race theory on YouTube right now, and the top results are not from experts or academics. They're from PragerU, Ben Shapiro, and dipshits who'd never even
James Lindsay is the foremost expert on critical race theory in the world, could probably run circles around this idiot.
heard of critical race theory until 5 minutes before they went on stage to talk about it.
I'm going to say this as bluntly and as honestly as I can.
Charlie Kirk's a moron and doesn't know what he's talking about.
Critical race theory is the most racist thing that is being spread in popular life in America. It is no different than the teaching of the KKK.
For as much as I don't understand why people take this Carlos Maza guy seriously, I also don't understand why people take Charlie Kirk seriously. Two sides, same coin.
Okay. Sure, why not? That creates what I like to call a dipshit feedback loop, where algorithms start recommending garbage to feed their audience, and grifters start producing garbage to feed the algorithm. One of the top results on YouTube right now is a video from this random musician titled "Why I Hate Critical Race Theory."
I hate critical race theory because...
Why is he questioning a woman of color? How dare he? How racist.
I hate racism.
Sure, why not? This woman very obviously does not know what critical race theory is, but her video got picked up by YouTube's algorithm. So now everything she makes is about critical race theory. It's become her whole shtick. Bullshit breeds more bullshit. Also, this weird thing keeps happening where she gets interrupted by her meatloaf timer while she's recording.
Offensive, and I'm not advocating. The meatloaf is ready. One second.
You want to talk about getting like we're interrupted by something weird? You're literally spilling soda on yourself in between your takes, dude. Like we all have our things.
Second, as art. There goes my meatloaf again. 1 second.
Girl, are you mainlining meatloaf over there? Edit that out. You look like an amateur. To make matters worse, critical race theory is kind of the ideal target for a right-wing smear campaign. I mean, talk about bad branding. Can you imagine 3 words more terrifying to the average Fox?
Okay, poll. Who wants to place a bet? Who thinks? Actually, I'll do a real poll. Will Carlos define CRT at any point in this video? At any point in this video? Yes? No? Okay, gonna ask you guys, poll sent. Do you think he is going to define critical race theory at any point in this video? And then follow-up question, do you think if he does define it, that definition is going to have anything to do with reality at all whatsoever?
Fox News viewer than critical theory?
Race?
Plus, CRT was created by law professors who were writing for other law professors. So if you want to look at the original documents explaining what it is, you're going to have to read through articles like Brown v. Board of Education and the Interest Convergence Dilemma, or Race, Reform, and Retrenchment, Transformation.
How lucky for us that James Lindsay gets off on reading those things, which has made him the foremost expert in the world on critical race theory. How lucky are we?
And Legitimation in Anti-Discrimination Law. Do you want to read that shit? Do you think Meatloaf Girl read it? Uh-oh.
We watch it every week, Carlos.
Where the people talking the loudest about this topic are the ones who know the least about it. If you're watching this video, I imagine you've already heard or maybe even internalized a pretty wild first impression of what CRT is. So when someone comes along and tries to tell you that that's not what critical race
Define
is,
it.
that most of what you've heard is
Define
utter bullshit, and that these people are intentionally lying to try to scare and manipulate you, it probably sounds hard to believe. And it doesn't help that that someone is a Mountain Dew covered wood nymph who's experimenting with wearing dangly earrings in his mid-30s. Is this the face of someone you can trust?
No.
Is it?
Not at all. Not in any way.
This is probably a lost cause.
He's so desperately, yes, dragon energy. You dragon energy, you just hit the nail on the head. This guy, I can already like read this guy's not even any problem. He is desperate for people to like him. He is desperate to be one of the cool kids. And I'm sure mommy and daddy had lots of money, but he still never quite fit in, and he couldn't figure out why, because mommy and daddy had lots of money. He could have everything he wanted, right? Am I right about that? That's the vibe I'm getting. Like, he desperately wants to fit in. Desperately wants to be liked. And that's why he does this crap.
But I promised this dead guy that I would keep fighting losing battles. So
for
all you free thinkers out there, here goes nothing. Critical race theory. What is it?
Oh, good, a definition.
Most importantly, which lever do I pull to be crushed by a safe? I first learned about critical race theory when I was a freshman in high school, getting ready for
What's the definition, Carlos?
Novice Debate Championship. And
what's the definition?
Do not masturbate.
Wait. Did he just say that he learned about critical race theory when he was in high school? I'm sorry, I missed that. Okay, let's just listen to that. Did he just say that he learned about critical race theory when he was in high school? Let's rewind, shall we?
Critical race theory. What is it? Who has it? And most importantly, which lever do I pull to be crushed by a safe? I first learned about critical race theory when I was a freshman in high school.
I first learned about critical race theory when I was a freshman in high school. I may look like I'm not paying attention sometimes. I may look like I'm trying to organize my knitting to fix a mistake I made, which is true. But I am like a ninja. Do not be fooled. I learned about critical race theory when I was a freshman in high school. 5 minutes. 5 minutes into the video.
Getting ready for the Florida State Novice Debate Championship. And please, do not masturbate to this photo unless you absolutely have to.
Oh, gross.
I was after school one day digging through this closet of research that had been left behind by former debaters. And in the back of that closet, I found this old haunted expando folder titled CLS, Critical Legal Studies. I know. Pretty sweet. Critical legal studies is an intellectual movement started by a group of law professors in the 1970s who came together to argue that the law is never truly neutral.
So his high school just happened to have a random folder of critical race studies stuff like sitting around? Why? If it's not taught in schools, then why did his high school, when he was a freshman, which seems to be based on the fact that he said he's 30, like a while ago now, 16 years? Am I doing math correctly? Like, that's a long time ago. And you're telling me his high school just had a random folder of critical race theory stuff sitting around that he just happened to find? Okay. Not being taught in schools? All right.
Of the legal system as this objective, rational rulebook. But in reality, it's much messier than that, full of contradictions and gray areas that humans have to resolve. When the Supreme Court makes a 5-4 decision, for example, looking at the same exact facts and coming to two wildly different conclusions, it's not because half of the justices have made a mistake. It's because a smart lawyer can use the law to justify just about whatever they want. Terms like due process, probable cause, equal protection, they don't mean anything on their own. They are given meaning by judges, juries, and lawyers who interpret those terms based on their own values and biases. And CLS argued that those biases are not random. Because the legal system is maintained by privileged elites, people who can go to expensive law schools, work fancy
Like
clerkships,
you, dude,
and
right?
get appointed to high office, the law tends to reflect their interests. The American legal system, for example, cares a lot about trademarks, contracts, and property rights.
So you're saying that there might be issues in terms of socioeconomic status, which I can get behind, right? We've talked about this a lot on this channel, which is a lot of the issues that are attributed to racism in this country aren't actually a result of racism, they're a result of socioeconomic status. So we agree, Carlos. We agree that it's not racist to talk about like socioeconomic status. I'm on board with that. But that has nothing to do with critical race theory.
But it says very little about your right to food, housing, or healthcare. Why?
You can already tell he's a
Not
socialist.
because property rights were given to us by God, but because the elites who create and interpret those rights are much less worried about you starving on the street than they are
Has this
about
guy's
you
parents
trying
bought
to
him a
keep
house or something? Like, am I wrong to assume that that's probably the case?
The primary function of the legal system, then, is not to fairly resolve disputes. It's to protect those who are already in power, to normalize exploitation and inequality by dressing it up in fancy court decisions, precedents, and legal
Champagne
documents.
socialist, yeah.
You're not mad that
Definitely
corporate
has those
billionaires
vibes.
are buying up local elections. You just hate the First Amendment. You're not mad
This
that
has
your boss
nothing to do with
can fire
critical
you
race
for no goddamn
theory.
reason. You just hate the freedom of contract. Why do you hate
Yes.
freedom of contract? Why do you hate America? CLS concluded
Hang
that the
on,
law
hang on,
is
hang
not
on.
a constraint.
Your boss can fire you for no reason. You can also quit for no reason. It protects both sides. Do you want to be stuck in a job that you hate, that you're miserable in for years and years and years and years and years because you signed some dumb contract that you can't get out of? Employment at will protects both sides of the equation. You can't protect one without protecting the other. A boss can fire you at any time for any reason or for no reason at all. You can also quit at any time for any reason or no reason at all. If you don't want to enter into the employment agreement, then don't enter into the employment agreement. Like, this is basic, dude. Some people have to work for a living. It's the way it is. Not all of us have rich parents.
On politics, the law is politics, a way for the ruling class to exert power while appearing neutral. That's critical legal studies. Now, in the back of that haunted Expando folder, there was a second, even smaller folder labeled CRT, Critical Race Theory.
So, again, I just wanna point out that he is literally saying in this video that when he was in high school, when he was 14 years old, he happened to find in his high school a folder filled with critical race theory material 16 years ago. But it's not taught in schools. He just happened to find it as a 14. How many of you, I'm just like going to survey the chat real quick. How many of you just tripped over a random folder of stuff when you were 14 in high school that really wasn't being taught in the high school? I'm sure that actually happened. Things that didn't happen for like 2000. I don't think he randomly found this. There's a like, no one randomly finds a random folder of crap in high school. That is not the way it works. Hang on, someone's calling my cell phone for some reason. They're gonna have to wait. But like, that doesn't even make any sense. I believe he learned about it in high school. I don't believe he went into a back room and in the very last filing cabinet in the back room, in the very back of the drawer in the filing cabinet, he unearthed a folder of critical race theory stuff 16 years ago. That doesn't make any sense. Come on. This is not, we're not in freaking Nancy Drew like high school mystery or something or whatever the hell.
Sweet. Critical race theory began when a group of non-white law professors saw the work that CLS had done and said, yeah, no shit. The law does reflect the interests of the powerful. And one great example of that is when it comes to race. These professors were living in the aftermath of the civil rights movement, and they were noticing that despite legal victories like the Civil Rights Act and Brown v. Board, life for Black Americans was not changing all that quickly. And the example that really helped me understand this when I was a teenager is what happened in Detroit.
This didn't happen when he was a teenager. It's happened 10 years before I was
Brown v.
born.
Board, the Detroit public school system was legally required to desegregate. The problem was it couldn't. Detroit's white population had already started leaving, preferring to move to the suburbs rather than live alongside their Black neighbors in the inner city, a phenomenon often referred to as white flight. Black families in Detroit could not make the same move. They often had less money thanks to years of racist zoning and redlining practices, and those who did move to the suburbs were frequently harassed by police and city officials to stop them from staying.
As the mayor of Dearborn, Michigan told a reporter, "Black people can't get in here. We watch it. Every time we hear of a Negro moving in, we respond quicker than you do to a fire."
Yeah, that's
It's
some
known among
bullshit
our
right
people,
there.
and
Thank
it's
God that
known
doesn't
among the
happen
Negroes
anymore.
It's fine. I'm sure he was just a bad apple.
He was the mayor for 35 years.
The result was a system of integrated schools, but segregated school districts, with white students clustered in wealthier districts outside the city and non-white students in poorer schools in Detroit's center, separate and unequal. In 1970, a district judge saw what was happening and said, all right, nice try, you dick tits. But this obviously violates the purpose of Brown v. Board. The judge ordered the creation of a busing program that would take some Black students from the inner city and some white students from the suburbs and send them to each other's schools. If the parents won't integrate, the kids will. Problem solved.
98% of you do
as
not
you
think
might
he's going to
imagine,
define critical race theory. And
the
I just want to
flights
point out
were
he
not
has not
short enough.
defined critical race theory yet. He has not.
My daughter will not be on that bus. She will not be in a
Yes,
parochial
bad shit
school.
happened.
She will be
We can all acknowledge this. We all acknowledge this
Protests
to be
broke out
true,
across the
Carlos.
state, with white families arguing that the busing program violated their rights. The KKK started blowing up school buses to deter people from using
If you
them,
hate critical
and white
race theory,
activists
you
started
are a member
going
of the
on TV and
KKK.
arguing that actually it was the busing program that violated Brown v. Board.
You see, we are told on one hand to be
No,
colorblind.
he probably is
And
not
this
going
how
to
I
define
have
critical
lived
race
and how
theory.
I
He
have
probably is
raised
not
my
going to define it
children.
at
And
all
thus
in
then,
any way.
For race only is simply, again, drawing attention to the differences in the races, and I disapprove of this.
You kind of have to admire the chutzpah of this lady. She is literally using the logic of Brown v. Board to defend segregation. I mean, who would buy this argument? Who would buy this argument?
I was going to say conservative.
In 1974, the Supreme Court intervened, and in a 5-4 decision, sided with the whites, claiming that because the school districts were not explicitly drawn with racist intent, they did not violate Brown v. Board, and the busing program would have to end. In his dissent, the one Black justice on the court, Thurgood Marshall, wrote,
"Under such a plan, white and Negro students will not go to school together. Instead, Negro children will continue to attend all Negro schools. The very evil that Brown was aimed at will not be cured, but will be perpetuated."
He was right. Nearly 70 years after Brown v. Board, America's school system remains deeply segregated. And Detroit, in particular, has some of the most clearly segregated school districts in the country.
Well,
Critical
okay,
race theorists saw what
okay.
was happening in
I have a solution. I have a solution to school segregation. I do. How about we give school choice, or even better yet, we just defund the schools and give parents that money and they can, pick whatever education they want for their kids. How about we just I won't even go so far as defunding the schools. Let's just not even go there. That's a long-term vision. How about we just give everyone school choice and say you can go to whatever school you want and here's the money to go to whatever school you want. Does anyone feel like that would solve the problem? I do not want kids to be stuck in a school they don't want to be in where they're not learning. I don't want that. I don't want that in any way. I think the easiest and quickest way to do that is to give everyone school choice. Universal school choice. Money follows the student. Money does not go to the system. That way, the inner city schools are either going to have to get better or they're going to go under. Anyone else in favor of this plan? I think that's a really good idea.
Places like Detroit and said, see, this is exactly the kind of shit we hate. Reforms like the Civil Rights Act and Brown v. Board were good at stopping really obvious displays of racism. But for most Black and brown Americans, racial inequality is much more subtle than that. baked into decades of legal decisions, economic policies, and policing practices that look neutral on paper, but end up treating racial groups very differently. The civil rights movement, CRT argued, had put too much faith in things like anti-discrimination laws and too much faith in the legal system's ability to correct its own biases. If we're serious about dealing with racial inequality, it's not enough to say, don't think about race and pray for the best. Instead, we have to think critically about how our laws and institutions might be impacting people of color differently, even while they claim to be colorblind. 2 more things about critical race theory, and then I promise class is dismissed. Chadwick, stop packing your shit before the bell.
He hasn't even
1,
defined it yet.
CRT is not super interested in individual intent.
That's
Many of the
very
white
true.
families
Yes,
that left
correct.
Detroit
Yes.
were doing it to get away from Black people. But some of them were probably just following their friends, and others were probably just
That
trying
is
to put
very
their
true. It is
kids
not
in the best
interested in
possible
intent at all.
schools, which just happen to be in the all-white suburbs. Critical race theorists argue that we spend way too much time worrying about who is or is not privately holding.
I just want to point out that so far our friend Carlos here has not defined critical race theory in any way. First, he talked a lot about a lot of issues that are related to socioeconomic status, which, you know, I will give him that. Then he talked about a lot of issues related to racism in the 70s. And I agree, there are implications to what has happened in the past that we still have to grapple with. What Carlos has not done is he has not defined critical race theory. He has not talked about any of the progress that we have made since the 70s. He has not put forward any solutions to actually fixing the problems that were created by all the racist nonsense before, like, you know, the 60s and 70s. He hasn't provided anything. So we have no definition of critical race theory. We don't know exactly how, there's been no discussion of how it applies to our current circumstance. There's been no discussion about the progress we've made since then. There's been no discussion of the specific, if you want to make the argument that critical race theory is a law school thing and it's just about the law, okay, I would like Carlos to cite laws that are still on the books today that lead to these overtly racist outcomes that he doesn't like. I don't think that's too much to ask.
Racist beliefs. Instead, we should focus on systems of power and ask why they might be treating racial groups differently. Like, why are Black people so much more likely to be charged for drug possession despite using drugs at a similar rate
Socioeconomic
as
status.
whites? Why are Black families so much more likely to be denied a home loan than other racial groups?
Socioeconomic
Why do major highways
status.
keep getting built right down the middle of Black communities?
Roads
that get
are
too close to white suburbs?
racist.
And isn't it weird that the legal system in charge of answering these questions is still overwhelmingly run by people who've never experienced racial discrimination? Remember, CRT was created by nerdy law professors, so they're less interested in is Karen racist and more interested in
Are you saying those Black, like, can we just rewind for a second and take a look at those nerdy law professors? Hang on.
created by nerdy law.
What color are those nerdy law professors? You notice he did the pic, like, quick. It was a quick picture. It's Derek Bell, Kimberly Crenshaw. What race are those nerdy law professors? Can anyone in the chat? I know we're all colorblind here. No, we're not colorblind. We're color indifferent. We recognize what race they are. We just don't treat people differently based on the color of their skin. What race are those nerdy law professors? Are they Black? Am I blind? Am I colorblind? They're Black. So those nerdy elitist law professors created critical race theory. Okay, that's an interesting juxtaposition, isn't it?
Law professors. So they're less interested in is Karen racist and more interested in why do Karens tend to experience the legal system so differently than their non-white peers?
I mean, we just watched Kimberly Crenshaw for happy hour last week, and we're like, Kimberly Crenshaw is very interested in if Karen is racist. She is. Guys, by the way, like, I see a lot of people like saying in the chat, oh, they're humans. It's the human race. No, don't play that game. If someone is Black, you can see that they're Black. I think it's like, honestly, this is what really bothers me about like the whole thing on the right, where they're like, we're just not going to acknowledge race at all. No, that's not going to win you any friends. It's not going to win you any allies. Right? We have to acknowledge race. You can see it. There are very real questions regarding race in this country still. We just can't have those conversations because critical race theory prevents us from having those conversations.
2, CRT is not a set of solutions. Many Black activists in Detroit
True.
believed that busing was the best way to deal with segregation, but many of them did not, arguing that the city would be better off just investing more money into majority Black schools. Critical race theorists often disagree about what to do about racial inequality, and that's because CRT is not an answer to a problem, it's just a way of understanding it. Or to borrow a grad school term, it's a lens through which we can better understand how inequality works and why quick fixes might not.
Critical race theory.
So this is I think the definition that they're settling on as a community, which is critical race theory is just a lens at which we view the world. Is that a definition of something? If someone says this is just a way that I view the world, is that a definition? Because I don't think that counts as a definition. I don't. That doesn't say anything. It doesn't tell us anything about the lens. I could say I just view the world through rose-colored glasses. That doesn't tell you anything about how I see the world. So, it's a bullshit definition. It's a bullshit definition that they are using in order to fit every single thing under the auspices of that definition without being specific at all.
Just says, let's pay attention to what has happened in this country and how what has happened in this country is continuing to create differential outcomes so we can become that country that we say we are.
Chadwick, eat shit. That's basically it.
No.
I don't mean to sell critical race theory short. Lots of brilliant people have done
That's
incredible
not
work
it
documenting
at
how
all,
the legal
Carlos,
system
but it's an
treats
impressive
Black and
example
brown
of being
people
incredibly
differently. And
lazy.
over the past 50 years, the lessons of CRT have expanded beyond the law into fields like economics and sociology. One area it's been especially influential is in...
Is this what entertains leftists? Is this representative? I'm asking a totally serious question right now because I do not know the answer to it. Is this totally representative of like leftist content on YouTube? Is this what it is? Man. Like, if I had to pretend to like this stuff still, I would go crazy.
Education, where teachers and school administrators have taken the lens of CRT
The
and asked
lens.
how their own policies might be affecting their Black and brown students. Like, why are Black kids more likely to be expelled for the same behavioral issues? as white kids? Why
Socioeconomic
is it that school
socioeconomic status. If we like again, man, if we could actually have a conversation about how socioeconomic status impacts your opportunities in the world, I would be completely open to that conversation. I think it's an important conversation. In fact, I would argue that if we can't get school choice and vouchers for everyone to go to whatever school they want, which I think is a solution that would solve the economic disparities created by the education system. And, you know, a kind of backup plan, a mitigating plan that I would be completely and fully in support of is putting an entrepreneurship program in every underserved public school, in every public school in every underserved community in the country. Teach kids in underserved communities how to build businesses. I would be completely, this is an example of equity that I would be completely and totally in favor of. Put an entrepreneurship program in every public high school, in every underserved community in America. I would be completely on board with this plan. Teach kids how to create wealth. Teach kids how to create businesses. Teach them how to serve their communities. Teach them how to serve the world. You know, it's not hard. Savric says CT equals pre-programmed thought avenues installed into the psyches of the masses and all placebo races and placebo identities, protecting their narrow boundaries of perception onto others and believing it to be real. Or as James Lindsay might say, critical race theory is the belief that racism is the fundamental organizing principle of society.
Dress codes are so often used to punish girls with traditionally Black hairstyles. And isn't it weird that so many of our textbooks are written by white historians who teach us that racial discrimination basically ended in the 60s? I mean, we were all taught about Brown v. Board, right? But were you ever taught about the Detroit case that basically overturned it? Do you think Meatloaf Girl was? But whether it's in the law
Wow,
or
that was
education,
incredibly
the basic
racist,
lesson of
Carlos.
CRT is
Congratulations.
the
That's
same.
incredibly
As much
fucking
as we may
racist.
want to be colorblind, America's institutions often aren't. And if we're able to acknowledge that, we'll be better at finding solutions that make sure everyone actually does get a fair shot.
Oh, my nip was coming out.
Now, at this point, you're probably having one of two reactions to critical race theory. Some of you are probably thinking, this is bullshit. Nobody actually cares about race anymore. You liberals want to make everything about race so you can guilt white people into voting for you. If black people are struggling, it's because black people are making bad choices. This is just cultural Marxism disguised as Black Lives Matter so you can sneak in your true plan for an anti-white revolution. And honestly, if that's how you feel, I guess all I can...
Carlos Maza just used the term anti-white, which he's procured from white identitarians. Why is Carlos Maza being a useful idiot for white identitarians? Or better yet, better question, because I don't think, I mean, to be quite frank, like, we all know where the term anti-white comes from. It comes from the white identitarians. It comes from the white positivity movement. They're making an active effort to try to get the term anti-white adopted into the cultural zeitgeist. They're using it to actively recruit in the anti-CRT groups online. We all know this because I've covered it extensively on this channel, and anyone who follows me, knows the hell that I went through covering this. But like, that's where that term comes from. I don't think Carlos Maza is smart enough to know that, but best case scenario is he's not smart enough to know that. Worst case scenario, he knows exactly where that term comes from, and he's using it to try to paint everyone on the right as a white identitarian, which, let's be honest, I don't think is out of bounds for him. Nick H says, first he says CRT is only in law schools. Now he says it has expanded to other areas, socioeconomic subjects. Can he be consistent? Apparently not. No, he's not being consistent at all. I also think that it's funny that he says it's only in law schools when he also says he learned about it in high school.
I can really say is, you're right. We don't believe a word of this shit. We know racism ended in the 60s. We're just making this up as we go along, pulling decades of legal research and peer-reviewed academic articles directly out of our asses. Why? Because we're bored. That's why. And we want to spend the rest of our miserable lives on this dying planet arguing about reverse racism with Ben Shapiro fans who skipped their intro to sociology class because they thought it sounded gay.
I never took intro to sociology.
40 years using critical race theory to teach Americans to hate white people. And somehow, nobody noticed until 1 month before the 2020 election. But I feel you're too late, free thinker.
No one noticed until 1 month before the 2020 election? No, wrong, false. I was screaming about this stuff for a good year before the 2020 election. And I was way late to the party. So no, Carlos. No, and even this is provably untrue, because Trump's executive order banning critical race theory in the federal government came more than a month before the 2020 election. I think it came in like September. So, I mean, reasonably close to the 2020 election, but it came well before a month before it. Yeah, James Lindsay's been screaming about this stuff for years. Like, there have been a lot of people that have been screaming about this stuff for years.
For now, I have the orb, and with it, nothing can stop me from building the culturally Marxist utopia of my dreams. Behold, white men, and let me show you the true meaning of playing the victim.
You know what's funny about this is, so I don't do you know how we know he doesn't understand this stuff? And this is all just like a major grift? So one of the reasons that we play Unwoke Bingo on this channel is that it is extremely predictable, the language that these people use. When we watch usually this happens on Fridays at 3 p.m. It's not going to happen this week, but usually on Fridays at 3 p.m. we watch critical race theory training. We've been doing this for almost a year on this channel. And the reason that Unwoke Bingo came about was because the language that these guys use is completely and totally predictable. Now, Unwoke Bingo's not going so well tonight. I know just by listening. I know the words always ping in my mind when they go off. The reason that Unwoke Bingo is not going well tonight is because this guy doesn't understand the language. He's actually, this is how we know this is a grift. This guy actually does not use the same language. The language is always the giveaway. You guys have always got to be paying attention to the language. Like, pay attention to the buzzwords. Who's using the buzzwords? Who's not using the buzzwords? He's not using their language. That's how we know this is just a grift. That's it.
The rest of you are probably wondering, what is the big fucking deal? How did CRT go from an obscure legal theory to they're teaching our kids to hate white people? It's a good question, and one that I thought would be fun to answer together. But if we're going to do this, I should slip into something a little bit more comfortable.
Do you have to?
It's called fashion, bitch. Look it up.
Okay.
Sorry I called you a bitch. I've been in a really weird headspace lately. Welcome to my living room, the place where I like to get obscenely stoned and stay up till 4 in the morning watching chopped reruns. Never gonna set. Put her in the blast chiller. Is she making meatloaf? Unfortunately, today's activities will be a bit less relaxing because for the past few months, and against the clear recommendations of the CDC, I have been plummeting down the right-wing rabbit hole.
Oh, Rufo! Rufo's there. Rufo's there. Anytime. There's Tim Pool. Rufo's there. Charlie Kirk's there. So, who's that? I don't know who that is. But anytime Chris Rufo is brought up in one of these presentations, that's a free bingo square. So you all get a free bingo square. Yay! I know this bingo's not going well tonight because this guy's a grifter and it doesn't use their language. But anytime Chris Rufo's mentioned, free bingo square.
My findings to you now. Fair warning, what I'm about to show you is unbelievably stupid. So if at any point you start to feel hopeless or overwhelmed, just know that this ride only stops for emergencies. And in 2021, despair over the collapsing state of American empire.
I don't want to be there, man.
Not
No.
an emergency.
Someone said in the chat, I should be there. No. Like, my whole goal in this is to fly as under the radar as I possibly can, while also still communicating with the people I want to communicate with. I don't want to be Chris Rufo, man. Chris Rufo is taking a bullet for all of us. He is taking a bullet for all of us. And he's the perfect guy to do it. But I am more than content to fly under the radar of these people for as long as I can.
Let's roll. So, as you can see from this ugly-ass chart, the phrase critical race theory basically never appeared on Fox News over the past 10 years. But that all changed in September of 2020, thanks to an appearance from this little guy,
Chris
a man
Rufo.
named Christopher Rufo. Who is Christopher Rufo? I'm glad you asked. Rufo is a right-wing political operative who likes to pretend to be a serious journalist, the kind of grifter who'll go after any gimmick or pseudo-scandal he thinks will get him attention. In 2017, he sued the city of Seattle over its tax on the ultra-wealthy, despite being too broke to qualify for the tax himself. In 2018, he launched a blink and you'd miss it campaign for Seattle City Council, during which he complained about the homeless and then almost immediately dropped out, claiming he was being bullied by online leftists. But in September of 2020, Rufo pulled off his biggest stunt yet, appearing on Tucker Carlson Tonight to warn the public about the spread of a dangerous new ideology.
Tucker, this is something I've been investigating for the last 6 months, and what I've discovered is that critical race theory has become the default ideology of the federal bureaucracy and is now being weaponized against the American people.
Pretty shocking, huh? If true, Rufo's evidence that CRT was infiltrating the federal government was a handful of anti-racism trainings at places like the Treasury Department and FBI, which were designed to teach employees about concepts like white privilege and microaggressions.
Today is Diversity Day. Someone's going to come in and talk to us about diversity, something that I've been pushing.
Yeah, he's provided ample evidence. Charm Theory Excess says, again, lots of white saviors, but few handing their jobs or positions in government over to a BIPOC. I think we're still waiting for a white savior to give up their job for a person of color. Yeah, Marta says Rufo is super smart, never a grifter. No, Chris Rufo is not a grifter. Not in any way is Chris Rufo a grifter. He is one of the, and you guys know, I am not shy about calling out people on both sides who I think are grifting. Chris Rufo is 100% not grifting. This is his mission, man. He's good.
And corporate mandated it.
If you've ever worked in a corporate office, you've probably sat through one of these trainings before. They're usually pretty boring. But according to Rufo, these trainings were part of a much more radical anti-white agenda.
Conservatives need to
There's
wake
that
up.
word
That this is
again.
an existential threat to the United States and the bureaucracy.
There's that word again. Why is Carlos Maza being a useful idiot for white identitarians? Is he too stupid? Or does he know what he's doing and he doesn't care? Neither of those answers are good, and those are the only two answers that exist.
Even under the Trump administration, is now being weaponized against core traditional American values.
Now, even if you are a straight up racist, there are two obvious problems with this thing. For one, racial sensitivity trainings are not critical race theory.
Yes, they
Kind
are.
of the opposite. One of the main arguments of CRT is that we focus too much on individual biases and not enough on systems of power. So many critical race theorists.
These trainings quite literally say, and again, we watch them every single week on this channel, except this week. That's why we're doing this. These trainings literally say that I just screwed up my knitting, but I'm going to fix it. It's going to be okay. These trainings literally say that intent doesn't matter. These trainings literally say that intent does not matter. So Carlos Maza doesn't know what he's talking about. There's ample evidence to this. By Carlos Maza's own definition, these trainings, if they say intent doesn't matter, and they do, by Carlos Maza's own definition, these trainings are critical race theory.
Including me, are deeply skeptical of these kinds of trainings. Not just because they're cringy and don't really work, but because they can distract from bigger issues. Like, who cares if the FBI is hosting an anti-racism workshop while their agents are targeting and harassing Black Lives Matter activists? Who cares how woke the Treasury Department is while the tax code still caters to wealthy white taxpayers? Obviously, Rufo's target audience does not care about any of this. But if your issue is really with woke sensitivity trainings, critical race theory probably agrees with you. The bigger issue, though, is that Rufo is a goddamn liar. The Washington Post looked into Rufo's reporting and found that his claims were either not supported by the evidence or stretched beyond the facts. The Treasury Department did not tell its employees that all white people were racist, as Rufo had claimed. Nor did the FBI tell its employees that straight white men are at the top of a pyramid of...
Do you guys remember when the Washington Post emailed me to try to get me to turn on Chris Rufo? They emailed me under the guise of doing a fact check on Chris Rufo, and what they were doing was they were trying to bait me to turn on Chris Rufo, which I will never, ever, 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 ever in this lifetime do. And they asked me leading questions like, didn't Chris Rufo steal this story from you? Because how Chris Rufo got his start in all this is he was doing reporting on a story that I broke about Seattle doing segregated training. And the Washington Post emailed me. They're like, well, aren't you upset that Chris Rufo stole your story and did all this stuff with it? And I took a screenshot of that email and I posted my response on Twitter, which was, no, I'm not upset at all that Chris Rufo took my story and ran with it. That's exactly what I want to happen. I'm grateful for his work. That pissed off the Washington Post something fierce. But my point is that the Washington Post does this crap all the time to try to throw Rufo under the bus. It has no basis in reality at all. So sorry, Carlos. No, not good enough.
Of evil, for Christ's sake. These were boilerplate voluntary HR workshops. Rufo was
not voluntary,
and then
not voluntary. No.
White people. And on that night, he had a very specific gullible white person in mind.
I'd like to make it explicit. The president of the White House to immediately issue an executive order abolishing critical race theory trainings from the federal government. It's time to take action and destroy it within his own administration.
You can probably guess what happened next. The next morning, Rufo got a phone call from Trump's chief of staff, and a few days later, Trump issued an executive order banning federal contractors from offering racial sensitivity trainings.
Critical race theory teaches that America is an evil country. I will not allow federal taxpayer dollars to be used to spread anti-American propaganda.
How great was that when Trump universally banned critical race theory in the federal government and he followed it up with banning it in all federal contractors? Like I miss that was the moment that made me a Trump supporter. It was. I was like, I was gonna vote for Trump anyway as a protest vote, but I think I fell in love with Trump in that maneuver. Trump is not a perfect man, not by any means. Don't agree with everything he did, but that was the moment where I fell in love. And so 3 cheers for Chris Rufo, 3 cheers for Trump for doing the right thing.
This is how most Americans first heard about critical race theory. Not from a law professor in a classroom, but from one con man helping another con man.
They didn't hear about it in higher education. Oh no. They weren't handed the elite knowledge from the anointed Oh, they learned about it on their own from people who aren't professors. Oh, no.
A desperate attempt to get reelected. And thankfully, it didn't work. Trump still lost. America had a quick little race riot. And for the most part, people moved on. You can see a big dip in Fox News' mentions of CRT in the weeks after the election. And Rufo
Because there was
kind
other
of
stuff
quiet,
going
too.
on.
The most noteworthy thing he did in December
What?
was tweet, "I'm at the barbershop, one of the last domains of traditional masculinity."
Yes, Chris Rufo has gotten very quiet. Chris Rufo was doing fucking planning. That's my understanding. So he was taking a break and doing planning. And of course Chris Rufo hasn't gone away. Chris Rufo's only done more. Did anyone see the election in Virginia a couple weeks ago? My God.
Blue collar men, macho talk, slick fades, sleeve tattoos, turn of the century prints, lady trouble, and anti-lockdown sentiments. The haircut is the rationale, but not the meaning. It's a little gay, Chris. Can everybody just grow up and be gay already? I'm sick of it. For a brief moment there, it really seemed like critical race theory was going to fade from the news cycle. I remember noticing it and thinking, oh, thank God. I won't have to make a video about this.
No.
But while I was
You
looking
didn't
into
have
a
to
false
anyway,
sense of
Carlos.
security, something
You didn't
weird
have
was
to. Oh, look, Chris Rufo. Oh.
Starting around March, a group of right-wing think tanks, all funded by the billionaire Koch family, began publishing piece after piece after piece about CRT, warning that critical race theory was infecting America's schools.
Oh, that's
and
a Koch.
indoctrinating
Okay,
kids
that's who that
with
guy is.
radical anti-American ideas. I don't mean a few clickbaity shitposts. I'm talking dozens of articles, podcasts,
actual
and web
articles.
videos,
Oh, the
all
Manhattan,
using the same language.
the Manhattan Institute is Chris Rufo, dude. So to say, he says in one sentence, he's like, I'm just going to rewind like just slightly to show you guys what I'm talking about. Hang on. I want to get to a very specific image.
America's schools and
hang on.
radical anti-American ideas. I don't mean a few clickbaity shitposts. I'm talking dozens.
There. Okay. So he just said Chris Rufo just faded off into the background and he went to a barber shop and made a gay tweet about it. The Manhattan Institute, that's Chris Rufo. So if you're complaining about all of the articles that have come out about critical race theory, oh, does it seem like Chris Rufo was maybe doing something in his time off? Manhattan Institute is Chris Rufo. Chris Rufo also works very closely with the Heritage Foundation. Look where all the articles are coming from. Yeah, Chris Rufo just wasn't doing anything. He just faded away into the background, Carlos.
Of articles, podcasts, and web videos, all using the same language that Rufo had used in September. Rufo himself was featured in webinars by groups like the Heritage Foundation, ALEC, and the Manhattan Institute.
Yep.
It's hard to overstate just how weird this was. Most of these groups had never mentioned CRT before, but now it was all they could talk about. These articles came out in a trickle last year, but then suddenly became a flood. An average of 5 pieces per week dropped from late March to June 30th of 2021. In April, Rufo was actually hired by the Manhattan Institute to be the director of a new initiative on critical race theory. And a few weeks later, he published a briefing book laying out the talking points the right would use to fight the spread of CRT in schools.
If people in these 14,000 school board districts don't have the courage to fight back, we're not going to win this fight.
What started off as one man's con had been adopted by the Koch brothers' massive propaganda machine. And pretty quickly, Fox News got the memo. If you look at these charts, you can actually see a link between when these think tanks start publishing their CRT pieces and when Fox News starts talking about it again.
No
so
kidding!
Oh,
I'm sure it's just a coincidence.
Was back, using the very talking points that Rufo had laid out in his briefing book.
These kids are not learning science, not learning mathematics. They're learning how to hate white people. They're learning how to hate their country.
What's happening in schools is they're trying to turn every kid
Ian
into
Pryor.
part of some identity
this
group.
guy, guys, that guy who's just on the screen, Ian Pryor, he is one of the main organizing people in Loudoun County. He has not gotten enough credit for the result in Virginia. He should have gotten a lot more credit than he did. That's who that guy was. Follow Ian Pryor. He's doing very good work.
Children into oppressors and oppressed.
Speaking of deadly pathogens, critical race theory is spreading. A new website will tell you if it's in your kid's school.
Now, let's just get the obvious out of the way. No K-12 school on the planet is teaching anybody's kids critical race theory.
Except for yours, Carlos. This is minute 26. All right, I'm gonna clip this together with what we found from minute 5 earlier. For those of you who have joined since then, at the very beginning of this video, Carlos Maza literally said that he first learned about critical race theory when he was 14 years old in high school, where he just stumbled on a mysterious folder filled with critical race theory.
The average American student does not even learn about slavery until 4th or 5th grade. The idea that kids are being taught.
Hey, Sarah in the chat, Sarah Nicholas, please email me your address so I can send you your shawl. I saw you and it just made me think of it. Please email me your address, Sarah.
A graduate level form of legal analysis is just... I went through every example in this goddamn briefing book, and not a single one of them shows kids learning CRT. What they do show is schools teaching basic lessons about things like race and inequality, and then Rufo lying about those lessons to make them seem scarier than
You
they
haven't
actually
defined
are. This
CRT,
story
Carlos.
about students being told to atone for their white privilege?
It never happened.
Bullshit. Debunked for months by local
No.
reporters.
We have had the mother of one of those students on this channel more than once. So that's bullshit.
And the school district. This story about students chanting to the Aztec god of human sacrifice?
It's a total fabrication.
More bullshit. Deemed largely false and
By
misleading by
Snopes.
fact checkers
Okay.
and the people who created the curriculum. Most of these stories don't even need a fact checker, though. They fall apart if you just read the article. Rufo claims that students are being forced to celebrate Black communism, but his article literally just says they were asked to define communism during a lesson about Angela Davis. Rufo claims that students are being separated into oppressor and oppressed.
Yes.
But that oppressor and oppressed language does not come from any teacher or lesson plan. It comes from an anonymous parent who was complaining.
This has been heavily documented, including on this channel, that students in high school are being asked to say they are oppressors if they are white. It's not just this one example. There are many examples of students in high school asking to admit, confess their oppressor status to their classmates. This is not even in dispute. There is a school in Nevada that is getting sued, that a judge has already said that the people bringing the lawsuit have a really good chance of winning for this exact thing, because the school tried to get a 17-year-old kid to say he was an oppressor in order to graduate.
That their kid was being taught about identity. It's tempting to call this cherry picking, but these aren't even cherries. There's no theory that connects any of these stories together unless you think just talking about race is a theory, which is why when people on Fox try to define what CRT actually is, they end up sounding like this.
It's liberal mumbo jumbo for if you're white, you should be treated terribly.
Yeah, I'm going to actually give him, I agree with him. Dan Bongino sounded like an idiot there. If he was asked to define critical race theory and that was his answer, and I'm going to offer that could have been cut out of context. I do not know the context in which that existed, right? So maybe he was trying to really define it. Maybe he was just being bombastic. But if that was meant to be an actual definition of critical race theory, Dan Bongino sounded like an idiot. And this is why people need to start committing the definition of critical race theory to memory. I've given my definition of critical race theory. I know some of you in the chat have heard it about 9,000 times, but I'm going to say it again. Critical race theory is an ideology that started in academia in the 1970s in law schools that teaches that racism exists everywhere in every person and everything and every interaction, and that the job of the critical race theorist is to explore how, not if, how racism occurs in any circumstance. James Lindsay has a more succinct definition where he says critical race theory is the belief that racism is the fundamental organizing principle of society. Both definitions work. I like mine a little bit more when you're doing the initial definition because it has a little bit more meat to it, and it helps people feel more comfortable that you actually know what you're talking about. But I can't stand when conservatives do stuff like this. If you are brought on a major show and you're asked to define critical race theory, give a proper definition of it. Otherwise, we are just setting ourselves up to be exactly what the left says we are. For the amount that I heard about 4D chess, 4D chess, 4D chess, 4D chess all throughout 2020, the right really sucks at playing 4D chess. You do not hand your enemies wins. When Dan Bongino says critical race theory is just mumbo jumbo, that's like putting a really nice dessert on a silver platter and saying, "Here, leftists, here, please use this against us, please. Please use this against us every chance you get." Just, you gotta be smarter than that, man. You gotta be smarter than that. And again, I'm willing to bet that this was cut completely out of context. I bet that's what happened. But the point remains. I see this crap all the time, and it really pisses me off. Stop handing the left unnecessary wins. Stop the unforced errors, man. We all make mistakes. I've made my fair share. I try to learn from them every single time. But I don't hand the left unforced errors if I can possibly help it.
Basically, racist.
Incorrect, though I don't know what I was expecting from the guy who thinks you make lemonade by putting lemons directly into the blender. There also wasn't any evidence that these lessons were causing a lot of controversy. Many of the early complaints about CRT actually came from a couple of parents at a handful of elite New York private schools. Schools with names like Brearley, Grace Church, and Dalton.
Those weren't the first, but okay.
Places that really hate white people. Nothing says kill whitey like a lesson on race from the Dalton Academy Warblers.
Yes, rich white people are the main proponents of critical race theory. Rich white people are the people that have advanced critical race theory. I don't know why people think that, like, rich white people are going to put themselves in a position of being taken out of power, by the way. But they are indeed the main proponents of critical race theory, for sure. No, I actually like Hunter. I don't care to debate him. I've had several conversations with Hunter. I don't care to debate him. I like him. I think he's a good kid. I do. I'm sorry to call him a kid. I know he's an adult and he has kids and all that stuff, but, like, to me, he's a kid because I'm much older than him. But I actually like him. I do. I know that's unpopular, but
These parents were pissed that their kids were learning about systemic racism in the aftermath of the George Floyd protests, and started writing deranged emails to hundreds of other parents saying shit like, "We have not had systemic racism against blacks in this country since the 1960s. By adopting critical race theory, Brearley is advocating that blacks should forever be regarded as..."
Well, Carlos, to be fair, systemic racism would require there to be laws and policies currently on the books, and you have yet to name any specific law or any specific policy that is currently on the books today that would lead to systemic racism. So if you want to argue that systemic racism exists today, fine. Name a specific law or policy that is currently on the books today that leads to systemic racism, or even as an alternative, if that's too hard, you could name a law or policy that you want passed, which you believe could lessen racial disparities. Take your pick, man.
Helpless victims. Black Lives Matter is a Marxist, anti-family, heterophobic, anti-Asian, and anti-Semitic organization. Now, is this funny? Yes. Is it camp? Absolutely. But is it newsworthy? For as long as schools have existed, there have been dumbass parents writing dumbass emails claiming that their precious angels...
You're going to tell me the left-wing media doesn't cover unnewsworthy shit like every single day? Please. And this is, I mean, I actually think it's a legitimate point. Like, is this newsworthy? They cover it all the time. I don't know. I like that it's covered on the news. You guys know that. But I think it is actually a legitimate question of, if you're covering this stuff every single day, is it still news? But left-wing media does this crap too. So whatever. What can you do?
Are being indoctrinated. Who gives a shit that a couple of entitled dummies are upset about their kids' curricula? I'll tell you who gives a shit. Fox News gives a shit. Because pretty soon we're getting interview after interview with other parents claiming that their kids are being taught CRT too.
To tell them that they're bad people because...
I'm seeing some black parents in there. Are we going to talk about the fact that black parents are upset about their kids being taught that they're oppressed and will never be anything in the world unless white people allow them to be? We're going to have that conversation? I'd be open to it.
Because of the color of their skin. It's sick, it's emotional abuse, and that's why we see people around the country standing up.
This wasn't just Rufo anymore. These are everyday moms and dads.
Oh no, average people. Oh no.
Ideology. But wait a second. Look at this woman's background. Creepy statue, Tea Party propaganda, a book called I Love Capitalism.
Wait a damn minute.
God damn it, that's not a concerned mom at all. That's Jennifer Stefano, Vice President of the Commonwealth Foundation and former Vice President of Americans for Prosperity. She works for the Koch brothers. That's not just a mother of five. That's Carrie Lucas, a Koch brothers lapdog with ties to the Cato Institute and IWF. That's not just a Virginia father, that's Ian Pryor, a Republican comms person who spent his career working for Karl Rove and Jeff Sessions. Everywhere you look, these concerned parents turn out to be political operatives, doing the same bullshit as Rufo. This Florida mom, a Republican consultant, most recently worked for the RNC.
Do you think it's a coincidence that people who happen to have political connections have an easier time of getting on Fox News? Does anyone think that's a coincidence? That people who play in Republican political spaces have an easier time getting invited on Fox News? I don't think that's a coincidence. Of course, he's not going to talk about like Azra Namani. He's not going to talk about her. A, because she's Indian. B, because she's not a conservative. But she's been on Fox News. Why is he not talking about her? Why isn't he talking about me? Well, again, like I said earlier, I don't really care if this guy talks about me or not. I don't really care. But I'd prefer he didn't, to be honest. I know like doing a reaction video is not the best way to fly under the radar for someone, but like I would prefer that he didn't. But like I've been on Fox News several times talking about critical race theory. I was on Fox News after the breaking the Koch Be Less White story. Why isn't he talking about me? Because I'm not a Republican political operative that he can use to try to say the only people who are upset about critical race theory are Republican political operatives. He's not gonna put the liberals or the walkaways or the former Democrats like me on this. It's not going to do that at all. That doesn't make any sense. Sarah, thank you for sending me your address. I don't know if I'll be able to get your shawl out tomorrow before I leave, but I'll definitely get it out after I get back.
This Virginia parent, longtime Republican activist who currently works at a GOP consulting firm. This Little League dad, former senior advisor to the Trump campaign who runs, you guessed it, another Republican consulting firm. But wait, I have more. This former school board member is a current activist for the Virginia GOP. This Florida mother of three is also a right-wing shitstarter and member of 7 different Florida GOP groups. This father of three is a pro-Trump podcaster who wants to sell you some of the ugliest CRT merch you have ever seen.
Holy jeez.
Oh my God, what is that?
What is that?
Oh my God, what is that?
And before launching a Parents Against CRT group in January, this concerned mom was actually working for a bunch of co-funded
Parents
think
Defending
tanks,
Education.
including Cato,
Okay.
FreedomWorks, and IDW. A fact that some of those think tanks are now trying their hardest to scrub from the internet. You can't hide from me,
for
Nicole.
fuck's sake.
I'm fucking crazy. The more you look into the panic over CRT, the more it looks like a classic case of astroturfing. A propaganda strategy in which a handful of billionaires pay a bunch of political operatives to create the illusion of a grassroots movement, which probably explains why so many of these early CRT stories came out of New York and Virginia. Because that's where the
They also said that Walkaway was astroturfed, and of course that turned out to be a lie as well. And if Walkaway is astroturfed, I'm owed a lot of checks. If Walkaway was actually astroturfed, I'm owed many checks and many fancier like places to stay and things like that. I just want to say I'm still waiting for my grifting check. I'm still waiting for my PragerU check. I'm still waiting for Walkaway money that apparently was astroturfed and I just didn't know about it. A lot of people, I mean, come on, dude. This is always what they come back to. It's like, oh my God, Republicans are funding things as though Democrats aren't funding things. This entire game is built on money, dude. Like, why are they so offended when Republicans are spending money on things? You spend money on things. Your parents probably spend money on things. Your parents probably spend money on you. My God.
consultants live. But if the Tea Party taught us anything, it's that with enough money and Fox News coverage, even AstroTurf will start to grow. You can see that as Fox's coverage of CRT started to pick up again, so did public anxiety about it.
We've obviously created a movement here.
So before long, parents across the country start showing up to their local school board meetings to protest this scary theory they just heard about on TV.
I am against CTR. It's a divisive method, which is going to actually divide people more than they already are.
What do you mean teaching race? What is there to teach about race? There is no systemic racism in this country, in this state, or in this country.
I think the Board of Education and those sitting on the panels are thieves. I think they're liars and have committed treason against our children. Stop indoctrinating our children.
Those kids.
Stop teaching our children to hate the...
I was the one that found that video. P.S. I was the one that made that shit go viral. It's on my other channel if you have any questions about that. I will say this though, I do think that mom is absolutely a grifter. I do. That mom swooped right in. She started branding shit. I was like, I like that she's communicating, and I'm not gonna say like, but like I'm not so sure about her, to be honest.
Police stop teaching our children that if they don't agree with the LGBT community, that they're homophobic.
Hold on, pause this shit.
Why can't we let the public know that you're teaching our children to go out and murder our police officers? Do you want the proof? I have the proof. And as long as I'm standing here on this good ground earth of God, I will fight. And this is not the last of me you will see. I'm retired. I have nothing else better to do.
Girl, we know. By the way, that woman absolutely got invited on Fox News, in case you're wondering if God is still dead. It goes without saying that most of the people at these protests have no idea what critical race theory actually is. They're just repeating what they saw on TV.
Can you name any critical?
No, I can confirm. I did not get paid for my PragerU video. I can confirm. I got a free trip to Los Angeles. That was it. That was it. I did not get paid for my PragerU video. Maybe I should have been better at grifting, man. I have no regrets. No, I did not. M169 says he's just offended that the right is using the left strategies of organizing. Only we're allowed to do that. That's exactly right. That's exactly right. Like every time the right puts money to something at all or fights back, they're like, no, you're not allowed to fight back. Only we're allowed to play in the sandbox. You're not allowed to play in the sandbox. That's all that is.
Race theory scholars?
Probably not.
Can you name any critical race theory concepts?
I don't know what the concepts are. I think I.
When did you first hear about critical race theory?
Sometime around last year.
Where'd you see it?
I'm on Fox News.
But even at these school board meetings, you can see evidence of bad faith shenanigans. This woman was described as a concerned teacher when she appeared on Fox, but she actually used to work at Right Side Broadcasting and is still listed as an activist partner at Turning Point USA. This woman was identified as a concerned mom after she spoke at her school board meeting, but she's actually a longtime political activist who hosts her own right-wing radio show. And then there's this guy, an Illinois father who became a viral sensation after his rant against CRT was tweeted out by Turning Point USA.
So when you talk about critical race theory, which is pretty much going to be teaching kids how to hate each other, you're going to personally tell a white kid, oh, the black people are all down and suppressed. How do I have 2 medical degrees if I'm sitting here oppressed? How did I get, first of all,
Sure, that's not really how oppression works, and it's not what's being taught in school, and it's definitely not CRT, but you gotta admit, still sounds pretty compelling, right?
That is actually what's being taught,
dude.
dude.
He's not really a concerned parent, is he? He's a goddamn YouTuber who posts clickbaity reaction videos and who specifically recorded and uploaded himself because he knew it would go viral. He's a grifter. It's Meatloaf Girl all over again. It doesn't matter, because by this point...
Dude, you are one to talk. You are one to talk, Carlos. You don't even know the language that these people use. You're grifting on this whole thing, probably try to get out from under mommy and daddy paying for everything. Please. Like the ironclad law of woke projection.
It's not just a Fox News story anymore. Now, local news outlets are showing up to these protests to ask about this critical race theory everyone.
Oh no, it's covered on the news.
Vague headlines suggesting that something nefarious may be happening in a school district near you.
The district says it's an ethnic studies plan, but parents say, nope, it is a critical race theory plan.
These reporters don't know what CRT is either. So instead, you get these poor school district employees having to explain over and over again that they aren't teaching a graduate level legal theory.
Poway Unified School District is not teaching critical race theory.
We have said for months now, we are not teaching critical race theory in our schools.
We are not teaching critical race theory in K through 12. We are teaching kids to respect and value their diversity and the diversity of others.
It's too late. By midsummer, most of these protests aren't even about the curricula anymore. They're about school equity and diversity policies, which are policies aimed at helping minority students feel more welcome in majority white schools. In Kentucky, they're protesting plans.
As a reminder, anytime you hear the word equity, that is code for equality of outcomes. What is equality of outcomes? That's Marxism. Anytime you hear equity, critical race theory will not be far behind, because The entire goal of critical race theory is what? To reduce racial disparities. And what is okay, pop quiz in the chat. We're going to see who's been paying attention on happy hour. What is critical race theory's real enemy? What is critical race theory's ultimate enemy? What is mentioned in every single critical race theory training that we watch very predictably every single time? What is the real enemy? Is it, oh, yes, you guys are so good. Capitalism, 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 capitalism. The real enemy of critical race theory is capitalism. They talk about it all the time in their trainings. They hate capitalism with a passion. The entire goal of critical race theory is to help the left obtain more power by dividing all of us so that they can destabilize the system. What do they want to do when they destabilize the system? They want to get rid of capitalism and introduce their little Marxist paradise. It's what it is. It's in every single training that we watch. He's already talked about it. He's not talking about it in the same way as them, but he's already talked about it. So that's what that's all about. Anytime you hear equity, which is about equality of outcomes, which is fundamentally an anti-capitalism idea, it's about everyone coming out in the same place, which goes inherently against individualism and entrepreneurship. By the way, this is why the left will never get behind the idea of putting an entrepreneurship program in every high school and every underserved community in America. I think that sounds like a really good idea to help people lift themselves up, build businesses, build wealth. The left will never get behind this idea because it is a pro-capitalism idea. I would like to know if Carlos Maza would be in favor of using our taxes to put an entrepreneurship program to practice equity by putting an entrepreneurship program in every inner city high school in the country. Would he be in favor of that? I'm going to guess no.
To hire more diverse teachers and carry more books with non-white characters.
They're trying to skirt under critical race theory, that they're not teaching it. They will be teaching it, but they're calling it the equity program.
In Georgia,
she's
they're
right.
protesting a plan to help minority students in the classroom and make sure they aren't being unfairly disciplined for behavioral issues.
The DEI program
Absolutely
is a Trojan
correct.
horse that will bring in critical race theory, white repentance, and the McDonaldization of America's students.
And in Virginia, they're protesting a student equity ambassador program to collect student complaints of racism and injustice, which came after kids said they were being called the N-word and threatened with having their hijabs ripped off their heads.
I think it is word salad. When you hear words like equitable, phrases like equitable outcomes, and it's you know, if it walks like a duck and acts like a duck, it's a duck. Quack, quack.
No decent human actually finds these policies to be controversial, but these people have been convinced that any attempt to even address racial inequality is just a cover for some nefarious anti-white agenda. And of course they think that. When no one can explain what critical race theory
Ding, 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 ding.
Who's to say what critical race theory isn't?
Can you describe to me what critical race theory is?
So,
in
layman's terms,
I fucking hate that Tim Pool came to this unprepared. I fucking hate that he fumbled this. As I recall, I don't like watch his show anymore, but like he did better, I heard, the second time around. But again, this is a case of like, don't walk into arenas where you don't know what you're talking about. If you're going to debate some idiot like Vosh over critical race theory, have a definition of critical race theory. Like, this is not hard.
I don't have the academic definition.
Side note, I'm going to complain about this with you guys while I'm among friends. Apparently, he's coming to Pork Fest. I'm not happy about this. I'm going to be an adult and everything, because obviously I'm going to Pork Fest. I'm going to be there all week. I really don't want to be around him. I do not. I think that'd be bad. I would just try to avoid him, though. Be an adult. I just think we'd go... But Pork Fest is freaking small, dude. And he's going to be hanging around the same people I am. And that makes me nervous. It makes me nervous. That's all I'm saying. I'm going to be the adult, but I'm not happy about it. I'm happy he's promoting Pork Fest. I'm happy he's promoting the Free State Project. But I'm like, man, I'm going to have to do like extra drugs that week or something. I don't know. We'll see.
Pull up for you, but specifically like privilege plus power, whiteness, minorities, traits of whiteness would be specifically like hard work, scheduling. I'll tell you this, the tenets of critical race theory, though I've definitely done segments on the overt academic definition of it, I don't have it pulled up. But when they put out a list that says whiteness, they say things like down with whiteness.
She doesn't know the word.
And it still doesn't matter. By the end of the summer, critical race theory has become an official Republican Party talking point.
Critical race theory.
Critical race theory.
Critical race theory.
Critical race theory is racism.
CRT starts showing up in Republican campaign ads. Dozens of school districts face GOP ballot initiatives to recall and remove their school boards. And over 24 states introduced legislation to ban the teaching of critical race theory in school.
Teaching kids to hate their country and to hate each other is not worth 1 red cent of taxpayer money.
The problem, of course, is that it's hard to ban something when you don't know what the hell it is. So these bills are all over the place.
The bill in New Hampshire provides a very specific list of definitions. It's all clearly defined. I can't account for the bills in the other states. But the bill in New Hampshire is very clearly defined, and P.S., it was built off of Trump's executive order, which is also very clearly defined, or was clearly defined before it was rescinded. Nick H says Tim did say he fucked up on the CRT definition, but this is part of the problem. Again, it's like, listen, man, Tim Pool is a generalist, and so I can forgive that, except when you're bringing an idiot like Vosh on your channel with the specific intent of debating critical goddamn race theory. Because again, and here is my argument. Every time shit like this happens, it is used against us ad nauseum forever. It derails things. It prevents progress. It prevents us from moving the needle. I don't care about clickbait nonsense on the internet. I care about winning. I care about winning. Oh, man. Mandatory Carry says, keep fighting. Build, get a home bag. Reminder that there is a number 9 or 17 is coming, and there are 4 lights. I'm just Mandatory Carry. Thank you, Mandatory Carry, for the super chat. But it's like why I get so annoyed about this, guys, every time someone screws up when they're talking about critical race theory, listen, it's not the end of the world. It's not, I'm not going to say it's like the worst possible thing that has ever happened in the history of ever. I'm not saying we can't recover from it, all that stuff, but it really does legitimately derail things. It really, really does. And it's detrimental to the overall cause. And it's like, no one's saying that you can't make mistakes. However, if you don't learn from the mistakes you make, if you just keep having unforced error after unforced error after unforced error, it's like, what are you doing? And it really does derail. The clickbaity nonsense that content creators and conservative influencers do, it derails. Remember when I broke the Coke Be Less White story? And then partway through, because I didn't expect that to go viral, right? You can't ever predict stuff like that. But partway through that, I started to realize, I was like, hang on a second. Coke is not the real enemy here. LinkedIn is the real enemy here. LinkedIn was the place hosting the training. We need to go after LinkedIn because not only is Coke accessing that training, everyone on LinkedIn is using that training too. There were thousands of organizations that were using that training on LinkedIn. But what was happening? Conservative influencers were like, Coke memes, Coke memes, Coke memes, all over the place, Coke memes. And then finally I went on Glenn Beck and I was like, this is not about Coke. This is about LinkedIn. And I think what happened is a Tucker Carlson producer was listening that day and Tucker Carlson ran with that line that night. And then the training got pulled off of LinkedIn. But it was actually really pissing me off that the extent to which conservative influencers were completely derailing something that was actually important. The training got pulled off LinkedIn, but it wouldn't have unless Tucker Carlson had a producer that had listened to me on Glenn Beck saying, this is not about Coke, this is about LinkedIn. That point was completely lost in the entire affair because conservative influencers were like, Coke memes, polar bears, all this stuff. It's like, do you want to win or do you want clicks? That is the fight that I feel I'm in most of the time. Do you want to win or do you want clicks? Because I give 2 shits about clicks. I want to win. You can tell how much I care about clicks by every time I tell off my audience. Because I know it's not your guys' fault. I know. I'm just getting out aggression. YouTube is my coping mechanism. M169 said, I was watching his stream last night. He was praising the Free State Project. I still left to watch your stream with Joshua. Priorities. Yeah, I heard about that. Free State Project's pretty happy about that. They're happy he's coming. Listen, I don't want to I don't want to get anyone in trouble. I'm not officially part of any of this. Well, I am officially part of the LPNH, but this is my personal opinion. I'm allowed to have my personal opinion. I was annoyed. I was annoyed. I was like, I don't want to be around this. This is my personal problem. I'm going to have to deal with this. I'll smoke a lot of weed that week. It'll be fine.
In Iowa, they've made it illegal to teach that someone is inherently racist or sexist based solely on the color of their skin. Literally nobody was teaching that, but okay. In Idaho,
yes, they were.
To blame an individual white person for actions committed in the past by other white people. Again, that's not critical race theory, but go off, I guess. In South Dakota, they've introduced a bill that would ban lessons that promote the overthrow of the government of the United States. Try and stop me. Most of these laws, though, are a lot less funny. In Montana, teachers are now—
If they're not teaching that stuff, then why are you worried about it being banned? That's what I want to know. Why are you worried about it being banned if they're not teaching it? Why? Makes no sense. I'm texting my husband my pizza order right now. Hang on. Okay, keep going.
Now banned from teaching lessons that promote controversial concepts such as racial privilege and identity. In Wisconsin, they've introduced a bill that would limit the teaching of concepts like, I shit you not, anti-racism, cultural awareness, equity, marginalized communities, patriarchy, racial justice, social justice, and systems of power and oppression.
Oh, good. They canceled Marxism. I'm sure you're very upset about this, Carlos. I understand why you're very upset about it. They canceled teaching Marxism. Isn't it already illegal to teach communism in this country? Pretty sure it is. Pretty sure it is. Ben says, CRT defenders, grade school are not teaching a college level legal course, but the racist divisive stuff they are teaching, I'm okay with that. Yeah, he just said he's completely okay with all of this. That the oppressor's oppression, power stuff, that's Marxism, dude. Carlos just said, I'm completely okay with them teaching Marxism to teenagers. Completely okay. Maybe even younger than teenagers. Who knows?
In my garbage home state of Florida, schools are now banned from teaching that racism is embedded into American society or legal systems, and must instead teach that American history is the story of a new nation based largely on the universal principles stated in the Declaration of Independence.
American history is a story of a new nation based largely on the Declaration of Independence. Is that factually untrue? Carlos has put on his communist outfit now. I'm getting the impression.
Could scream forever about how fucking ironic this all is. How the party of Don't Tread on Me is now the party that wants to make sure no one dares speak ill of Big Brother. How the facts don't care about your feelings crowd now wants to ban lessons that might hurt white parents' feelings. And how the same dipshits who complain about cancel culture and the thought police are now cheering on laws that are so draconian that teachers are canceling their lessons on race out of a fear.
As a reminder, I'm not going to speak to all the laws, but I will speak to the anti-CRT law in New Hampshire. The anti-CRT law in New Hampshire literally says in the bill, which is 4 pages long if Carlos wants to read it, it literally says that you can teach any of the subject matter that is in this bill as long as you do it from a completely objective perspective. Literally says that in the law, that you can teach whatever you want as long as you're not being a little activist. You're doing it from an objective perspective.
Of a government crackdown. But what's the point? If you still think conservatives actually give a shit about free speech, you are either a Joe Rogan fan or a CNN employee. Either way, it's too late for you. The bigger point is that none of this has anything to do with fighting some radical left-wing theory. As actual critical race theorist David Theo Goldberg wrote, CRT functions for the right today primarily as an empty signifier for any talk of race and racism at all, a catch-all specter lumping together multiculturalism, wokeism, anti-racism, and identity politics, or indeed any suggestion that racial inequities in the United States are anything but fair outcomes, the result of choices made by equally positioned individuals in a free society. When I first read this quote, I was like, damn, empty signifier? I'm going to use that in the video. But it turns out I don't need to, because Rufo basically just admitted it on Twitter. We have successfully frozen their brand, critical race theory, into the public conversation and are steadily driving up negative perceptions. We will eventually turn it toxic as we put all of the various cultural insanities under that brand category.
Yeah, I'm going to be honest. I completely understand what Chris Rufo is doing. He's playing with language. I'm not sure I'm 100% on board with the strategy. I get what he's doing. I get what he's going for. It kind of feels like he's figuring it out. He's figuring out how to play with language in this, because where he is absolutely correct is this is a war of language. He is 100% correct about that. I'm just not sure this is like the best way to go about it, but we'll see. I think he's experimenting with how he's communicating it, and I think he's figuring it out. He has good intent. Like if there's anyone that can figure it out, it's him. Like I have complete and total faith in that. I'm not sure how. I mean, this was also back in March. I'm not sure how that meshes with what he's doing today. Andrew says, "Don't always agree with you, Carlin, but you're absolutely right about moving the needle being the utmost importance. Thanks for your voice and clarity." Thank you, Andrew. I appreciate that.
The goal is to have the public read something crazy in the newspaper and immediately think critical race theory.
Yeah, see, this is the part that I'm not actually in favor of, because I think that he's doing this to the detriment of the public actually understanding what's going on. And now we're seeing this with social emotional learning, where the right, the conservatives, assume that social emotional learning is exactly the same thing as CRT, and it is not. And what I witnessed yesterday when the FBI story came out about the FBI using counterterrorism measures to investigate parents, I actively witnessed right before my very eyes conservative influencers inventing conspiracy theories about this all being because of Merrick Garland's son-in-law, because he knows he's going to get caught for like conflict, because Merrick Garland's son-in-law runs a critical race theory company, and that's the only reason he's doing this. That's the only reason he arrested Steve Bannon, was because he wanted to mask the conflict of his son-in-law. Merrick Garland's son-in-law does not run a critical race theory company. Merrick Garland's son-in-law runs a social emotional learning company. Conservatives think those things are the same right now because of this strategy. Because of this strategy specifically, those two things are not the same. And I witnessed them literally creating conspiracy theories. And I was like, dude, again, unforced error. And I've expressed this to Rufo, and, he's still playing with it. He's still figuring it out. He knows my opinion on this, though. I do not think that he should be using this language interchangeably, and I do not think it's responsible. I also think the other thing is okay, so what if everything bad is dubbed critical race theory? Well, what happens when critical race theory is banned? Then all of a sudden people go, oh my God, don't have to worry about that anymore. Critical race, we banned critical race, we banned all the bad things. Well, no, all of the bad things are not critical race theory. The vast majority of the bad things are still there. Right? So you're going to fool people into a false sense of security of thinking this thing is banned because they know everything is critical race theory. This is how I think about things. Like this is my background. I was thinking about this earlier today. Like, as an organizational psychologist, I learned to look at systems and to predict how people were going to behave within those systems. That's exactly how people are going to behave. They're going to be lulled into a false sense of security because everything bad is dubbed critical race theory, even though most of the bad things are not critical race theory. And then critical race theory gets banned and they go, oh my God, all the bad things are gone. No, they're not. See the problem?
Decodified the term and will recodify it to annex the entire range of cultural constructions that are unpopular with Americans. Oh my God, he admitted. This was never about critical race theory. They just needed a boogeyman.
No.
Some race baby catchphrase.
Not actually what he said at all, Carlos, but okay. You don't have to cry or anything. It's not what he said.
All of this screaming, all of this divisive bullshit. For what? What? Oh shit, the meatloaf. If you asked a sociologist, they'd probably describe the freakout over critical race theory as a moral panic, a situation in which the public is tricked into overreacting to something that isn't actually dangerous. Imagine the Salem witch.
The public is not reacting strongly enough to critical race theory, in my opinion. Sam says the left made everything you don't like racism. It's a bad idea to do the same with CRT. Sam, I actually had not thought about it in that way, but I think that is a really good point.
Witch trials, but if Fox News were covering them.
It's civilization-ending poison, but it's everywhere. How widespread is it? Well, we can't really be sure.
Like the witch trials, the point of a moral panic is not to warn the public about a real threat. It's to manipulate them, to take advantage of their fear and anxiety to get what you really want. So what do the people lying about critical race theory really want? For a lot of these grifters, it's attention. I've joked a lot about Meatloaf Girl this video, mainly because she's an icon, she's an idiot, and she is the moment, but also because I think she represents the motivations behind a lot of the bad actors in this story. If you're trying to draw attention to your YouTube channel, your consulting firm, or your vile Substack, moral panics offer a great way to get
Hey,
yourself
we agree
in
on
front of a
Barry
large,
Weiss. Okay.
triggered audience.
Common
I can
ground.
roast Meatloaf Girl all I want, but she went from a few thousand subscribers to over 45K when she started posting about CRT.
Oh,
Mr.
please.
Clickbait over here was already.
Oh, please. I hit 100,000 subs in less than a year. Please. It's just a function of when she was posting. By the way, if you are enjoying this video, please make sure you're subscribed to the channel. If you think you are subscribed to the channel, please double check because YouTube may have made that decision for you. Mount that like button if you're enjoying this. Let's wrap this up.
A pretty decent sized YouTuber, but he's enjoyed a nice bump of about 20K subscribers since his rant went viral. I'm not jealous, I just want to die. There's always a market for stirring up racial anxiety. And if you're a non-white person willing to say what rich conservatives
Really? Because I'm
wanna hear,
losing subs right
even
now.
better. Actually, let's
Probably.
check in with Meatloaf Girl and see what she's up to now.
Hit the like button, subscribe if you aren't already subscribed to see more videos exposing the darkness of woke mentality.
Holy shit.
Carlos, you started a YouTube channel to get out under the thumb of your parents. You are the very last person that should be talking about people grifting. I started a YouTube channel because right after I accidentally went viral, the pandemic started and I was bored. You started a YouTube channel with the specific intent of using it as a career move. This is not my fucking career, dude. This is like not most people's career. You did this with the specific intent of having it be your career. So you are the very last person to talk about grifting.
Shit, that's depressing. Her YouTube transformation is complete. For the professional grifters, your Shapiros, your Owens, your Pools, the rationale is basically the same. These people have made a career of saying what their audience wants to hear. And
Almost any time you hear someone call someone else a grifter, like this obsessively, they themselves are grifting. This is the ironclad law of woke projection. Actually, no, it's not even woke projection because it happens on the right too. Almost every single time you hear someone call someone else a grifter, they themselves are grifting. You could probably make that argument about me too, but you guys can decide whether or not you think I'm grifting. I frankly don't think I put enough effort into this to be considered grifting. But that's just me. I put effort into other things that make me more money than this.
and saying it every single day. So they kind of have to agree with whatever moral panic is popping off, even if they haven't done the reading. Shapiro is an especially sad example of this because he went to Harvard Law, the birthplace of critical race theory. He absolutely studied CRT as a student and knows how ridiculous this all is. But if he says that, his audience will turn on him. And more importantly, he won't get invited on Bill Maher to agree that all of this race stuff is really tearing the country apart.
Do you really think that Ben Shapiro needs to be invited on Bill Maher?
Fixate on race?
Please.
I'm not for that. If it's about dividing everybody into oppressed and oppressor, I'm not for that. So there are things that are being taught and are going around that I'm not for, that if that was critical race theory, I wouldn't be for.
Oh my God, how do you host a political talk show and not even Google the topic before the show starts? New rule, don't have sex with anyone who watches Bill Maher. I don't care how hot they are. Do not cross the dicket line. Now, to be fair, not everyone lying about CRT is doing it for attention. They're also doing it for the money. Rufo has gotten a very nice career bump from all this. He's got a cushy new think tank job, a donations page to fund his fight against critical race theory, and he's become Fox News' resident expert on the thing he made up.
He's very good at his.
The Hall.
He made it
And
up?
apparently,
Okay.
he's not alone. Critical race theory has become a fixture in right-wing fundraising emails for both
That's
politicians
true.
and think tanks alike.
Yeah, that actually pisses me off, by the way. It pisses, like, the right that is doing nothing about this crap pisses me off, and it should piss everyone off that's actually doing this authentically. They're raising a boat metric F ton of money on all of this and aren't doing a damn thing about it.
NBC reports that local political action groups have raised hundreds of thousands of dollars campaigning against school boards to talk about racial justice. As one of the attorneys suing a school district over CRT told a reporter, this is a new area where people think they can either become famous or make money on the issue. And they're probably right. Good Lord. This video should just be called Screaming the Quiet Part Out Loud. Speaking of which, I should probably also acknowledge that many of the people lying about CRT are doing it because they are just racists. Like, Tucker Carlson is a soulless grifter, sure, but he is also a sincere bigot who wants a white ethno-state. And I don't want to downplay the ideology that motivates people.
Okay, listen. I spent several weeks doing intensive research about actual white identitarians, and let me tell you guys what. If you haven't heard me say this before, let me tell you what. When you actually watch white identitarian content for like 8 to 10 hours a day, every single day for weeks, all the stuff that these people talk about as being like white identitarians and racist, it looks so silly. It looks so stupid. It looks so stupid. If you ever want to make these people look like extra stupid, go watch yourself some white identitarian content. Go peruse the white well-being movement and the white positivity movement, which are actual white identitarians. Go watch that content and then compare it to what these people say is racism. It is, oh my God. I felt like I was in like I always feel like I'm in clown world, but like extra clown world when all that stuff was going on. Holy crap. It was like, this is it? This is what you consider? You think roads are racist? Okay. I just watched a 2-hour podcast with David Duke and a British neo-Nazi.
People like him. But behind these grifters, behind Tucker and Rufo and Shapiro, there are these goddamn billionaires. Corporate oligarchs, oil barons, and Republican kingmakers who've spent lots of time and money trying to make sure that you're afraid of critical race theory. What's in it for them? And for that, I give you...
And by the way, isn't it a little ironic that Carlos himself has used the term anti-white 3 times at least in this video, which is a term specifically being pushed by white identitarians. So Carlos himself, while complaining about Tucker Carlson being a white identitarian, is specifically pushing the propaganda of white identitarians. Either because he's too stupid or because he knows exactly what he's doing. And neither of those things are good. No, he didn't mention James Lindsay. He just briefly showed a snip of James Lindsay's PragerU video. That's all he mentioned for James Lindsay.
Eric Bell, the father of critical race theory, who saw this coming nearly 30 years ago.
Racism, ever since slavery, has provided this stabilizing influence. It is what those on top have used to keep those on the bottom, if not satisfied, at least quiescent. And it works very well, Charlie. It works very well.
It's hard not to notice that the panic over critical race theory really only started after Republicans lost control of Congress and the White House. As the party that had done nothing for 4 years but pass tax cuts for corporations, give away billions to weapons and oil companies, and cut government aid during a pandemic, suddenly found itself out of power with no serious policy agenda to speak of. Moral panics, and especially moral panics about race, are a reliable way to win back voters, to convince them that you're on their side, even when all you've done is sell them out. And you can actually see this strategy going all the way back to the fight over busing.
President Nixon believes busing is wrong.
It's wrong for the white children. It's wrong for the black children. Will have the effect of creating hatreds hatreds among the kids.
In 1970, before the Supreme Court made its decision in Detroit, Richard Nixon's political strategist explained how Republicans needed to use racial anxiety to convince white Democrats to vote against their own interests. For a long time, the liberal-conservative split was on economic issues. That favored the Democrats. In the future, the liberal-conservative division will come on social issues. Will there be a continuation of bureaucratic do-gooder interference symbolized by the school busing issue? The more Negroes who register as Democrats in the South, the sooner the Negrophobe whites will quit the Democrats and become Republicans. Without that prodding from the blacks, the whites will backslide into their old, comfortable arrangement with the Democrats.
I've always been against the busing of little children to achieve a racial balance, and I always will be. Let's keep our children in their own neighborhoods where they belong.
You can really see this strategy if you look at old Republican campaign ads. Look how quickly this guy pivots from talking about busing to talking about cutting social services.
There are many differences between my opponent and myself. One is busing. Mondale's for busing, Phil Hansen's against it. Mondale's for more and more government programs. I say no.
The same thing happened in the 80s. As Reagan was working to cut taxes for the ultra-rich and make radical cuts to government programs for the working class, his aide explained how Republicans used racial bullshit to sell trickle-down economics to white Americans.
You start out in 1954 by saying nigger, nigger, nigger. By 1968, you can't say nigger. That hurts your backfire. So you say stuff like forced busing, states' rights, and all that stuff. And you're getting so abstract now. You're talking about cutting taxes, and all of these things you're talking about are totally economic things. And the byproduct of them is blacks get hurt worse than whites. Obviously sitting around saying we want to cut taxes, we want to cut this is much more abstract than even the busing thing, and a hell of a lot more abstract than nigger.
Boy, am I glad I did not have to read that quote myself. Don't worry, that aide was chased out of Republican politics soon after that. And by that, I of course mean he became chairman of the Republican National Committee.
We are fortunate to have someone of Lee's perception leading the Republican Party. He is now involved.
Now we're going back to history we don't like, history we don't like.
One
Blah,
of those
blah, blah, blah,
Republicans
blah,
he
blah,
helped
blah,
elect
blah.
was George Bush, who ended up hiring him as his campaign manager and who won his election thanks to an ad that used images of a black criminal to stoke white fears about law and order.
And we see our politicians use it all the time. Our president got elected, notwithstanding the tremendous gaps in wealth and income, the needs for health care weren't even serious issues last time, because he talked about Willie Horton. And Willie Horton was the 1988
By the way, there are examples going back to Reagan. For every single Republican presidential candidate, they've trotted out racism as a point against them. Every single one.
keyword that everybody understood. Now, what are the Republicans going to use for the keyword in 92? We're not sure, but they will have one.
They sure will. Republicans are already working to make CRT a centerpiece.
Goddamn right, as well they should.
Part of a broad strategy to run on culture war issues, rather than campaigning head-on against Mr. Biden's economic agenda, which has proved popular with voters.
Republican candidates are betting this is connecting with voters of all political backgrounds. The first test will be here in Virginia in the governor's race in November.
It's genuinely soul-crushing.
He did this video before the governor's race, by the way.
To watch billionaires and their lapdogs win election after election using the same old racial
It's
bullshit,
so frustrating to
divide and
watch
conquer.
people I don't like win elections. When my team loses, it's just so disappointing when my team loses. And I can't implement my little socialist agenda. It's so disappointing.
But you know, there is a way out of this, free thinker. A way to break the cycle. To connect racial justice and economic justice once and for all. It's been here the whole time. It's the old one. After all, what happened in Detroit is not just a story about race. It's also a story about class. About how the wealthy abandon the poor, and how the lack of funding for schools and affordable housing can keep working class people trapped in cycles of poverty that last for generations.
We should have national resources being poured in, but right now there's just a level of indifference.
That statistic about racial disparities and drug arrests isn't just about racist cops. It's also about how the privileged get to play by a different set of rules in this country, and how police departments often target neighborhoods they know can't afford to defend themselves in court. That report about racial disparities in the tax code is literally also a report about how our economic system caters to those who are already wealthy and how the ruling class manipulates the law in order to avoid paying their fair share.
As so often is the case, the problems that minorities are complaining about are dramatic instances of injustices that are visited across much of the population based on class.
Critics accuse CRT of being obsessed with race, but the whole point of CRT is that focusing on race alone is not enough. As long as America's institutions allow the powerful to exploit the powerless, that exploitation will have a racial component. And that awareness can lead to some dangerously free thinking. Kimberly Crenshaw, one of the founders of CRT, went on to coin the term intersectionality, which is the idea that categories like racial inequality and economic inequality cannot be fully separated. They often reinforce each other. So while
That's not what
segregated school districts,
intersectionality
for
is,
example,
Carlos.
are bad for Black and brown kids, they are also bad for young people, retirees, and workers who quickly find themselves getting priced out of fancy white suburbs. And while the collapse of labor...
Again, I have to ask, and we got to wrap this up because I got to go eat some pizza. I have to ask, would Carlos be in favor of putting an entrepreneurship program in every inner city high school in the country so that we can teach those kids how to build wealth and businesses so that we can reduce economic disparities? I'm in favor of that. Let's find some common ground, Carlos.
Unions hurts all workers. It especially hurts Black and brown workers who are uniquely at risk for employment discrimination. It's not a coincidence that the states that have banned critical race theory are the same states with the lowest
So let's
minimum
teach them
wage
how to
rates and
build
the
some
weakest
businesses.
unions. Because while immigrants, people of color, and working class whites are exploited in different ways and for different reasons, they are often exploited at the hands of the same powerful elites and have reason to look out for each other, to treat racial justice and economic justice as part of the same struggle. And maybe that is why billionaires are so intent on banning critical race theory, banning anything that gets you to think about systems of power or question whether America is really as free and...
Are you admitting, Carlos, that critical race theory is just about questioning systems of power? Because that's kind of what you just said. You just said billionaires just want to ban anything that gets you talking about systems of power. Sounds to me like you're saying that critical race theory isn't really about race at all. It's about systems of power, which is exactly the point. It's exactly the point. Critical race theory is not about race. It's about power. Their ultimate enemy is capitalism, and their goal is to destabilize the system so they can usher in their little Marxist utopia, which Carlos here would be perfectly fine with.
Fair as they tell you it is. Not because CRT divides us, but because, to be honest about what happens to Black and brown people in this country, is to become aware of all the ways the deck can be stacked against you. To begin considering the ways that you
Carlos
too
wants to
might be
teach Black
playing
people
a
that they're
rigged game,
oppressed.
and to imagine viewing each other not as enemies in an endless fake culture war, but as potential allies, co-conspirators, or most dangerously of all, dining partners. Hey. What? Don't get cringy. Fine. You know what? Believe whatever the hell you want. I grow tired of these free thinkers. Their Substacks. Keep listening to Ben Shapiro complain about the Aztec god of human sacrifice and then wonder why nothing ever changes. It's a free country. And while I have genuine...
Well, things pretty clearly are changing, Carlos, because we won the governor of Virginia and you lost. Too bad, so sad.
Given this my best shot, my blood sugar is getting low. So this is the end of the video. Godspeed, join a union, and
don't join unions.
Bon appetit.
All right, we're not going to watch him eat meatloaf. That was as painful as I was hoping it would be. I can be a little bit masochistic sometimes. All right, guys, that's all I have. I hope you enjoyed the reaction. Let me know how you think I did. I'm never watching leftist content again. I'm going to go to England now and have a nice little purge of all of the feelings that I have about that entire affair. But I'm actually not going to England yet. I'm going to England tomorrow tomorrow evening. So what I'm doing before then is super exciting. So before then, I'm actually going to have a call with my awesome, amazing local supporters. We are doing a community Zoom call at noon tomorrow. Guys, the call is on as planned because my flight's not till 7:30. So we will be doing the community Zoom call tomorrow. If you want in on this action, all you need to do is become a supporter in my locals. You can go to kb.locals.com or follow the link at the top of the chat, kb.locals.com/support, because you do need to be a supporter to access this. You can become a supporter at $5 a month. You can become a supporter at $50 a year. You can make a one-time gift as well. Whatever floats your boat, but I will be talking on a private Zoom call that's not recorded or anything. We can just be normal human beings at noon tomorrow. Plenty of time to join. I hope you guys come and check it out. It really is like, I know I dote on my locals a lot, and I'm sure everyone says that. I'm sure every locals community is the best, but my locals community is actually the best. I consider these people friends. I consider them teachers. I like on these community Zoom calls, I actually don't talk all that much. It's wonderful. I listen to other people, their ideas. We have conversation. We debate things. We don't always agree. You don't have to agree, but you do have to be civil and have that dialogue. And we've had some really, like, the community Zoom calls lately have been like on point. We've been getting into some really in-depth discussions. So please make sure you join. I will still be posting content while I'm in England. No rest for the weary. I gotta make the money to pay for the trip to England after all. So I will still be posting content, but probably a little bit more intermittently. And next week is Thanksgiving anyway. So guys, that's all I have for tonight. I'm gonna go eat some pizza. Have a great rest of your night, and we'll see you soon.